Okay, hey everyone, welcome to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really cool review for you guys from the brand Laco, or Lasher and Company, as it was originally known. Now, they were founded back in 1925, and they do produce their products made in Germany. And they are one of the 5 original Flieger manufacturers, along with A. Lange & Söhne, Wempe, Walter Storz, which will eventually go on to be known as Stova, and IWC. Now, in terms of the type of watch, this is a pilot's watch, and some key characteristics and sign language when you're looking for something within this genre. Of course, you're going to find that balance of both legibility and functionality. This is known as their Köln model, and it's a special pilot model from Laco that offers a sportier take on the aviation genre, but by combining classic Flieger elements and modern diver features together to achieve a more contemporary air, land, and sea capable tactical feel. Now, these start at 1500, as this one is in particular is configured, and this sample was kindly provided by the brand for the purpose of this review, but no brand ever has any editorial input on the review, and all of the thoughts and feedback are always my own. As you guys can see, I do have my personal Laco Flieger Pro there off to the left-hand side lower portion of the screen, as well as an extra strap from the brand to really be able to showcase how this thing takes on a whole new personality depending on the setup. So with all that said, let's go ahead and zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, so as you can see, very, very handsome. I think very minimalist. Feels very Germanic, but also very tactical, thanks again to those diver-like elements. And to just comparatively see these side by side, you can see there's definitely a lot of family resemblance in terms of the dial layout, the handset choice. Of course, this is a very premium kind of distilled version of, a modern German pilot's watch, especially one that in particular pays tribute to the original Fliegers. And I love this watch. It's one of my finest timepieces, and it has been very much up-spec'd. But in terms of daily wearability, I think visually, a pilot's watch like this, it's a very particular aesthetic, and ultimately it's probably a little bit more versatile to have something like this in terms of daily wear, but they both do offer a whole lot of bang per buck. Now, in terms of this new model, let's go over the dimensions. So it's going to be 41 millimeters in diameter, and that is at the case. And you can see there is some overhang from this nicely notched bezel. Now, the bezel width across is about 42.3 millimeters. Also, you're going to have about a 12.1 millimeter thickness, and that is including the crystal as well. And then we have a 49.5 millimeter lug to lug, so a little bit longer on the lug to lug, but I will say you can see that these are very organic lines that do come down from that mid case, so it does wrap around the wrist quite well. Full 316L stainless steel construction, of course, fully brushed. Getting into the sapphire crystal here, it is a mild double dome with an inner anti-reflective coating. You can opt to get an outer anti-reflective coating, which you can see here. It does a really good job of just making that dial look like you can reach out and touch it. But of course, with something that you're wanting to wear more at a tactical capacity, might be better to, don't spend the extra money on getting the outer anti-reflective coating, because then that's something that you kind of have to worry about. If you're going to put it through its paces, you don't want that to get scratched, right? You might have a scratch-proof sapphire crystal, but then essentially there's going to be a coating on top that can take scratches. So it's one of those things, I think in the right applications works well, and others maybe not as well. So I think in this case, this might be better for you saving money, because at least because of the overall theme, you're going to want it to be a little bit more rough and tumble. Now, in terms of the bezel action, very nice. 60 click, but like a nice, snappy, ooh, very deliberate. Very little play to even report. It wants to rest right on each click. Doesn't want to back up or scoot forward. Look at that. The alignment is quite lovely. So very nice, and the insert is loomed. So again, you're going to get that more tactical feel. In terms of the crown, you can see it still has that signature onion style crown, but it is nicely signed. Check that out. And I know that's sometimes that can be an issue, right? Even though it's still beautifully decorated and quite traditional, some people prefer to have that little signed letter right there from the brands, and it makes perfect sense. Now here inside we have the movement. Let's go ahead and give it a quick little wipe off from this display back, because you can see the movement here. I'll just try to get it all lined up and then focus. Right, there you go. So the movement is going to be an Elaboré grade Sellita SW200, known as the Laco 200. So with that, level, of course, this hasn't been upgraded. You can upgrade it, and there's a lot of options. You can check the links essentially, but you can make this a top grade. You can get it decorated, all those things. But this Elaboré grade, in terms of the current form that it is, you're going to get that Inca block shock protection, gilded nickel balance wheel, Nivarox 2 hairspring, and you're going to get it regulated to 3 positions, which is going to equate to 0 to plus 14 seconds per day, which is quite nice. I like that the regulation starts at 0 versus like -4 or -5. So it's potentially this should never be running slow, and in the worst case, be running less than 15 seconds per day fast. So I can appreciate that. And when you consider that it starts at 0, you know how dialed in those ranges are, right? It's not a wide range of error there. Also, you're still going to get that 38-hour power reserve, 4 hertz sweep in terms of that 28,800 vibration per hour beat rate. So very nice, very smooth. Getting into the dial, of course, you can see it is a nice matte black affair. It does have a printed index. There's no ghost date position on the crown, which is nice. Sellita's been really great about offering that more and more. Or either that or brands are just more keen to actually opting into that. You're going to get thermally blued hands. Oh, let me give the crystal a little wipe here. So check that out. So these aren't coated or anything like that. They're thermally blued, which is going to be the more premium take on that. And I'm happy to see it here. And then in terms of the lume, it's going to be Swiss Superluminova C1. So it's going to be very crisp and very white, although maybe not quite as potent as the C3, but at the same time, the day lume on the C3 is going to give you a bit of a tint and a hint of color there, at least comparatively. You're getting still 20 atmospheres of water resistance, which is pretty crazy that this watch right here has 200 meters of water resistance. Very cool. But here, it's going to be a little bit more purposeful, right? In this particular housing where you have a rotating bezel for dive timing, potentially, right? So 200 meters of water resistance, very nice, very confidence inspiring. You have that beautiful crown, screw down, nicely guarded there as well. You're going to get this solid 3-link bracelet, which is a bit basic. To be quite honest, it's nothing special. It's a nice 3-link bracelet. There's no extra articulation. The end link is also solid, quite nice, nicely shaped, but nothing extra. And it does go with the theme here in terms of it just being a very business first type of watch, right? Function forward in terms of that design. It does have pin and collar construction here. There's no extra beveling or anything like that. Again, very straightforward, very sterile. 2mm taper from about 20 millimeters at the widest point on top, and of course 20mm lugs, tapering down 2mm to about 18 millimeters at this push button clasp here, which does have a nice fold over for the locking mechanism, dual push button, fully milled scissor folding section, and then you do have 4 positions of manual micro adjustment, as well as a stamped diver's extension, which you could use, of course, to put it over a wetsuit or maybe over a sweater or something if you're in a cockpit and you really want to, again, go with the vibe of the fact that this is actually a pilot's watch. And then, I think the tactical side of it is, hey, if your watch goes down over water, or say your plane goes down over water, that you have a watch that's going to be ready to be used and employed tactfully as well, on the ground, in the water, and it's still going to be good to go and extremely capable. So with that said, actually quickly here, I was going to get it on the wrist, but one thing to note is check out this strap. This is very nice, and actually if you get it on the strap, it does lower the cost. But look at this hybrid strap. Very nice, water resistant, handmade in Germany, text there. Very nice. I mean, these are the type of straps, guys, that typically you have to search for in the aftermarket. Something of this quality, something that fits thematically, so well. Look at that. I mean, look at the personality change. It goes to full on tactical timepiece. I mean, this is ready to be worn in a flight suit, in a pair of utilities. It's just like, this is very, very nice. Like, I like that. Of course, I am a bracelet guy. I like the wearability and the daily kind of versatility you get with a steel bracelet, but I would be remiss if I didn't highlight just how cool that looks. Let me know down in the comments if you think I'm gonna throw it on the I haven't decided yet, but thankfully Laco even provided a tool so that I can swap it out. And something that's interesting about this tool that I do want to mention is that, like, each side there's like a different pick there. So like you have this smaller one which works great for bracelets, right? But then on the other side, it's like, well, what do they have here? Well, it's a wider one, which works better for straps. So I thought that was neat, and why not share that? So shout out to Laco. Of course, again, look at that. Even the packaging, very refined, very sleek. You kind of have this nice, almost like nubuck texture to this. So very cool. But with that said, let's actually get this on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, as you guys can see, a full-size timepiece. And again, with that more open dial with a lot of empty negative space, it's going to appear large. And then, of course, you have even now the bezel insert elongating and kind of continuing that dial. So it's going to make the watch wear visually quite large. But I will say again, in terms of the physical footprint, I don't mind it. This definitely feels full size, not oversized. And there's some oversized kind of search and rescue style watches that you can find that are going to be quite oversized. I think this is actually quite manageable at that 41 millimeters. Again, it's really more so the open dial, and then of course the matching bezel insert that visually makes the weight a little bit bigger. And but if I get my wrist a bit too close to the camera, you're noticing a fair amount of perspective distortion, or maybe you don't realize it, but it's making the watch case look much larger, and it's because it's making the sides of my wrist kind of fall away, and thus the sides of the bracelet. But if I keep my wrist nice and low, check that out. What a difference. You can see the sides there, and you can see this is actually pretty nicely centered on my 7.5-inch wrist, or 19 centimeters in circumference, and check that out. So what I'll do is I'll tighten up the frame, and then all of a sudden, look at that. It's just a more truer indication of what your eye will perceive when you're wearing this piece. And although my wrist is on the slightly larger side of average at 7.5 inches, it's also quite a tall and round wrist. It's not like it's super wide, flat, and accommodating. So I do have to be cognizant of things like lug to lug, as well as overall proportions. And I think, again, this hits a nice sweet spot. No, it's not some vintage inspired mid-sized piece. So if that's what you're looking for, this isn't it. But in terms of like a daily wearable sports watch, a tool watch that feels robust enough to be used as a tool, this absolutely nails it. So I'm really liking this. And again, like I love when brands kind of do stuff that I wouldn't even think of. And then they introduce me to something where I'm just like, wow, what a great idea. Like, and then you start seeing, yeah, there's other brands that have kind of dabbled within this space. But I think this is actually just a really cool take on that, right? In terms of the aesthetics, in terms of the execution, and then even in terms of the price point, $1,500 isn't bad for a brand where, I mean, this is made in Germany. You're getting the Elaboré grade movement that you can upgrade and, you know, do a little bit more to, and a little bit more with if you really wanted to. But I think, you know, kind of in its base form, even kind of as seen here on my wrist, this is still a very, very compelling option where you know, it's like having a dedicated Flieger and a dive watch all in one. So it's two watches for the price of one, and I think that is pretty neat. But with that said, let's go ahead, actually get this off the wrist, set for some Lume shots, a little light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Oh, wow. Look at that Lume. Very, very nice. And again, this is C1, not C3. So really beautiful application from that standpoint. And the fact that this, again, is meant to be used, you know, in some underwater capacities, you know, dual purpose as a dive watch. This is going to serve you really, really well. But one thing I always do like to work in is going to be a bit of a low light transition, because you're always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. Some of you might have noticed I swapped straps. Look at that. I wanted to showcase the texturing on this beautiful tactical strap. The nice thing is it even comes in different sizes. So if you got a smaller wrist, you can have less extra tail. If you have a larger wrist like myself, you can have it to where it just dials in perfectly balanced. And look at that. It just, again, it just changes the personality and goes from that kind of versatile, you know, a little bit more vanilla kind of execution, more minimalist, to now a very specific and very deliberate execution aesthetically. And then, of course, you can see that it's just nothing but legibility there, high contrast all the way around. Here's where you're maybe seeing it, where it's, you know, not going to be as good as C3, at least in the dark, because it's going to be losing a little bit of that punch. So we'll hit it up with the black light here, supercharge it back. Check that out. Very, very nice. But the nice thing is, of course, the Lume is crisp and white and very modern, which again fits with the aesthetic of a more modern piece, especially with this tactical strap attached. So very, very cool. I could do this all day, guys. Look at that. Look at how beautiful that matte finish is there. I don't even know what the bezel insert material is. I feel like if it was ceramic, I probably would have been able to find that in the documentation, because they would have probably promoted it. But it looks like it could be a matte ceramic. I don't know for sure. It could also just be a coated steel or coated aluminum. But I will say they did a beautiful job with the engraving that, of course, they filled up to the brim with Lume. So that is just, again, working really, really well. So with that said, get the lights back on here and get into a few closing thoughts, guys. On the wrist, nice, sporty, full-sized wear. This is, again, this is not the mid-sized, mid-century throwback by any means. This is a nice, full-sized, sporty, tactical tool watch feel. But the nice thing is it doesn't approach feeling oversized. Again, it's even though it might visually present larger, the fact is it has a 41 millimeter diameter. That's the case with you know, like its actual physical footprint is very manageable. I mean, the visual footprint, you know, with that 42 millimeter and some change bezel, sure, it might be a little bit larger, you know. But again, the actual footprint of what's in contact with your wrist is going to be more manageable. Of course, if you do have a smaller wrist, it's going to be more so the lug to lug of the 49.5, almost 50 millimeter lug to lug. That's going to be something that might be a little overwhelming or overpowering. But I will say on the strap, again, it breaks that silhouette down a little bit more. So it does, you can kind of configure this in a way that might work for you, right? In a better way than it works for me. In terms of model variants, it's also available, of course, as you guys saw, on the strap. Or you can get it on bracelet, as we've showcased here, and you can also get it in a brushed finish that you've seen here, or a matte finish, matte blasted, which is going to be a little bit more, I don't know if that's more old school. I mean, it adds that dark element, feels quite tactical, but for me, the brushed still gives me enough of an industrial vibe. And also, then you can opt into a matching bracelet, which is cool. So yeah, in terms of comparable models, there are definitely a lot of other options out there for this do-it-all kind of pilot's watch, but not many that offer this combination of history, quality, and capability. Like, this watch kind of does it all. I mean, the only thing it's missing is a date window, which most people kind of in the enthusiast market would prefer to not have a date window. So, I mean, kudos to Laco for knowing their audience there. So for me, guys, bottom line, Laco really surprised me with this release. I love their traditional styles as well as some of their more contemporary models, but the way that they managed to kind of split the difference here and get the best of both worlds is really satisfying. It's a great wearing experience. It's something that, you want to wear. I like that it's not just aesthetically, pleasing, but even the tactile engagement with the clicks, with the way that they notched the bezel. It all comes together in a really just well thought out and well executed way. But let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you liked the video, please like, and if you're new, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.